How are you guys doing today? I just I just realized I'm still in the habit of going outside even when I don't really need to. But some things kind of become automatic after a while, and the person really doesn't it doesn't think about what exactly or why they're doing it. Just kind of go through the motions. Although it is good to stand up and move around, see the sun, or at least the sky. Hopefully this Hopefully this isn't too scratchy. I'm going to take off this gator so it doesn't cause all that static and scratching. Hopefully it wasn't too bad there. And so won't be as bad as that one stream. That was pretty horrible. I don't know how you guys handle that. Good afternoon. How are you doing today? I've been very slowly working through Perkea vote. It's the English translation is Ethics of the Fathers. The 2-1, the end of Perkea vote 2-1 has something really critical to know. So apply your mind to 3 things, and you will not come into the clutches of sin. Know what there is above you, an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and that all your deeds are written in a book. And that's definitely a very crucial, vital thing to keep in mind constantly. But that only helps so much as for a person to apply whatever they know, and or stay away from things they know to not engage in. Apply whatever it is they've learned, either to positive or negative commandments. But the one that I've been thinking about lately is I'm going to skip ahead a couple sections. Although Perkea vote 3 is pretty good. Be careful in your dealings with the ruling authorities, for they do not befriend a person except for their own needs. They seem like friends when it is to their own interest, but they do not stand by a man in their hour of distress. The one that I really like, I've been thinking about, and I've experienced firsthand lately, is Perkea vote 2-4. I'm gonna have to scroll back to see who the sage is. Rabban Gamliel says, he used to say, do his will as it were your own, so that he will do your will as though it were his own. Set aside your will in the face of his will, so that he may set aside the will of others for the sake of your will. Now, what does that mean? Can any of you guys or ladies have any idea of what that is, or what that could possibly mean? I know there's probably not too many people watching this live right now, so I don't really expect a live response, especially not with the general lag from the streaming platform as a secondary vessel through to YouTube. But see, I pretty much knew in my heart a large portion of what his will was, and what I should have been doing, or at least working towards, for at the very least the last 6 months, or a lot longer, at least a year, most likely in some respects. And I thought I was doing that, but that was the insidious tricks of the Satan to get a person to do some good, or even perhaps not some good, and disguised in using a person's own ego and their own desires for honor and recognition and fame, or, in other people's cases, maybe wealth, and all the other disgusting things that come along with that people really want, aside from using fame and wealth as a vehicle to get them into the filth that they really desire. But finally, after a lot of toil on my part, and nullifying my own will, as best I can in at the current place I find myself. Did I finally start shifting over to really trying to fulfill his will in as many as many ways as I can, and stop trying to worry about offending people or making friends. Or what other people might think. As in the process of doing all that, a person saves absolutely no one, least of all themselves. And usually it's like the exact opposite. The amazing thing about the Rabban Gamliel's statement of Torah in Pirkei Avot 2:4, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 2:4. The amazing thing is, like most things, the amount of the amount that a person does decides how great the effort and how whole the person puts forth their being into to whatever it is they're undertaking, but especially so with making his will your will. It's there is virtually no limit. The only limit is the vault of Shemayim. Person can't become God. That's pretty clear. But almost everything short of that is possible. The if a person really puts all their heart and all their effort and self-sacrifice into it, the a person will not just see small miracles and amazing blessings of both spiritual and physical blessings in this world. They will see literal miracles, like God defying the laws of creation for a person. Not that I've seen that, let alone will I'm likely to ever experience that. But those things are definitely possible if a person really nullifies their own will and learns what his will is, and makes his will their own, and keeps at it forever. But nothing good is ever easy, and it's definitely never free. It definitely takes a lot of hard work and self-sacrifice and working for a person working to break their midot, their bad character traits, and to always be constantly vigilant of what they know their traits are that they need to rectify. Excuse me. Last week has been kind of weird. Maybe a couple weeks, I'm not sure. It's been like a weird combination of what a lot of people would seem like or perceive as not good things, or you know definite challenges both in my own life and what I've seen in that others are experiencing, and at the same time an abundance of blessings and merit that somehow I've managed to accrue in my account. But at the same time, I know it's a massive test for me. One that I don't think I've ever passed before. But it's never over. A person always has to constantly keep pushing. If they ever want to maintain, let alone have the abundance of good and blessings keep keep increasing. Most people don't want to put in the effort, though. Most people want most people want an easy button. They want a pill that they can take, or something that they can buy. They want to have someone else do all the work. Or just wait until the last minute and then shoot their way out of it. Either quite literally or in some other, some other, metaphoric related scenario. I was thinking about the some of the laws of kosher that were mentioned in the I don't think it was last week's parashah. It was the week before. I can't recall which one it is. It's the one before Metzora, or maybe it's the one before that. The one that describes about it's like shortly after the start of Vayikra or Leviticus, where it talks about the signs of what a kosher fish is, or what a kosher animal is. There's a rule in the Torah that for anything to be true, it needs two witnesses, or to be accepted as a truth. Like in a court of a Bet Din, or when the Sanhedrin was still around, in order for a witness to be, or a statement to be believed about someone who was being prosecuted, there had to be two witnesses that agreed on the account, and not just general agreeances. The statements had to coincide, like 100%. There couldn't be a difference in details. Like one of the signs for a kosher fish is it has to have fins and scales. And while that's not something the goyim really need to know, or should go out of their way to learn. It's something that I've learned just by listening to lectures and reading the parashah. But that's the funny thing about so much of the Torah, that the sages have ruled that the goyim aren't supposed to learn, is that it's without knowing a lot of this stuff, a person doesn't have the knowledge to identify so many other things that could lead them to sin and not fulfill his will. As it applies to everyone, even goyim. And the Gemara says that there's out of all the countless species of fish in the ocean and all the rivers, that the Torah just says that a kosher fish has to have fins and scales. It can't just have one or the other. It has to have both. It has to have it has to have the two witnesses that testify that it is kosher. And then I'm not sure what the source is in the Gemara. I just know from listening to lectures that it says that of all the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or however many species of fish in all the oceans and rivers and lakes, that there will never be a fish that has scales but doesn't have fins. And then someone, one of the other stages commented that what about this other fish in Africa? It has scales but it doesn't have fins. And the other sages replied that it can't be. Bring us, let's see the fish. Let's see the fish where it's at. And so they, I guess there's some fish in Africa or something that in the market had scales, but it didn't have fins. So they go to where they catch these fish. And it's this really weird fish that is like its fins act like kind of like a porcupine, where as soon as it gets handled or pulled out of the water in a net as a defense mechanism, its fins shoot off as projectiles to protect itself. And that is that kind of reinforces one very important way of thinking for anyone that wants to stick to the truth, as hard as it may be, and as unlikely as it sounds, to not believe something that sounds like the truth, where the Torah is the truth, and if anything comes and is in disagreement, is a person's obligation to use their own reasoning, their intellect, and their imagination as a way to understand and know that there are no mistakes in the Torah, not in the written Torah or in the Talmud, in the oral Torah, and the oral traditions. As hard as that may be for a lot of people to swallow and accept, the mistake is always with people and their interpretation or their understanding. Now, there could be a number of reasons why something might contradict something. Especially, there's a lot of people that claim or believe that, the written law is true, but the oral law, isn't, or isn't divine, isn't from God. And well, sure, it is it was written down afterwards, and it has a lot of a lot of statements that were made by the sages at various times. They they fulfill the written law through that, through the oral tradition. Like Berkey of Oaths starts with, I don't know how many pages because I've never read the whole thing like in a book, but it's a huge long section of just names, like pages and pages of names of where the ethics of the fathers and all the oral traditions come from. Like every, as far as I know, the only there's only a few specific names that aren't mentioned, and that's like some of the names of the great assemblies, like a couple of those. But other than that, every single name is mentioned from at least from Moshe, and I believe it goes back to Avram, Abraham, but I'm not 100% correct on that. And it lists everyone, at least from Moshe, and then I believe it's Yeshua ben Nun, and then there's there's no way, I don't even remember the next person, let alone all of them, because it's like at least 100 something names, if not more, until from 3,330, like 4 or 5 years ago, when Moshe received the Torah at Har Sinai, and then to when the Talmud was was written and redacted, whenever that was, like somewhere around 1,800 to 2,000 years ago, I think is when the first oral tradition started being written down, because they feared it would be lost. But one way to know that there has to be an oral tradition is that you can't keep the Torah without one. It's impossible. I mean, there's nowhere in the Torah where it says what a Brit Milah is. I mean, how is anyone to know, what you're gonna cut a chunk of earlobe off, or maybe you just have to trim off a piece of your toe. And then you might say, well, everyone knows what that is. Well, that's how oral traditions work. It's something that's passed down from one person to the next. It's just that the Jews' oral tradition was massive. Like the stuff that's in the Talmud, in the Gemara, is like a fraction of what the real oral tradition was. There's just so much of it was lost. I mean, if a person thinks about all the say just the writings from like when the Talmud was redacted, somewhere around 400 or 500, like 1,500 years ago, give or take, to around around 500 years ago, like the span of 1,000 or 1,500 years, say from then to now, plus or minus 500 years. Think about all the books that came after that. There's like you could fill probably a I don't know, hundreds of thousands of books have been written by so many different sages and rabbis, and that amount of time had passed since the giving of the Torah to when the Talmud was redacted, if not more. So whatever. Just thinking about all the that's like probably close to the equivalent of what was lost, if not a lot more, because it included oral traditions from at least as far back as Avram. And then something that I ignorantly and arrogantly thought I had an insight on, which objectively it was definitely not new. It's pretty obvious, but when I saw the passage in the Torah about feeling to fill in, like a ridiculous thing. I don't even know what a phylactery is. It sounds like such a ridiculous word. Well, that's usually the word that's translated or used in English for feeling. It will be a sign on your hand or upon your arm and between your eyes. It will be as frontlets, which also doesn't really make not very descriptive of what they actually are. Other than that, it doesn't mention anything about what they are or like how to make them, what they look like, how you're supposed to put them on. Yet for thousands and thousands of years, every observant Jew has had a pair of tefillin, and they all know how to, they've all know how to put them on. There have been, I think it's called a sofer, or like a scribe, that oftentimes either works with a slaughterer, a kosher slaughter, because everything's made out of leather, and it has to all be kosher. Can't be like roadkill. And there's a super specific way that tefillin have to be made. There's certain passages of the Torah that have to be on scrolls inside the box, and nowhere is that mentioned in the written law. Not even alluded to. One other amazing thing about feeling is that, and I think, if modern society and science manages to not be totally destroyed before, very soon, if all the structures and institutions of science are still around, I think they'll find a lot more in various other mitzvot. Is that putting on feeling is literally lengthens the life of a person. The act of putting feeling on does something to the heart and to the blood vessels that help prevent death or catastrophic results from a severe heart attack. And it's kind of funny. The the doctor who did this study, it didn't sound like he was observant, but for some reason he decided that he was gonna do this study about the longevity of observant, what he called orthodox men, and why they try to find out why they had a much lower level of heart failure and heart attacks than pretty much any other demographic in the world. And of course, the physical aspects of putting tefillin on the arm are just a reason. It's just a reason for people to, like everything else in the world. It's something in creation that gives people that don't want to fulfill his laws a way to convince themselves that it's just nature, that it's just a coincidence. It's just, it's just something that just so happens to be, and it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it's that he's protecting those that keep his laws. When I was thinking about the two witnesses, since the fake holiday of Easter is pretty close, I started thinking about why people celebrate it, and the whole idea about seeing an empty cave or tomb. I never really read a whole lot of the New Testament, and I didn't really. I stuck to Wikipedia, but I figure it's close enough for government work, so to say. But the Wikipedia says there's four accounts in the Bible that all vary, in varying degrees on what happened when the people, different people witnessed either the empty tomb or thought they saw the dude after he died. mean, I don't know about enough about the Bible to know whether the witnesses were kosher or not. But it's, if there are certain things that are described to be pretty easy to tell if a person knows, enough about what a kosher Jew is. One thing about the being a kosher witness, a woman is not a kosher witness. It's not because they're not to be believed. It's because they shouldn't be put in that position to have to give testimony in court. Because the things that a witness has to go through, the interrogation is not honorable, and it's not fitting for, especially a Bat Israel to go through something like that. And maybe the two Marys did teshuva, and they were no longer prostitutes or whatever they were before. But in either case, they aren't kosher witnesses. Then there's some other accounts, but most of those are like just say there's like 500 people or a lot of people or whatever, which they could all been desecrating Shabbat or Goyim, which neither of those are kosher witnesses. But even setting aside all that, I started to think about the stories I did read a few times years ago, and like Bible study when I was like in, I don't know, preschool or something. When my parents sent me to the church during summer because that was the only place that had cheap daycare. And I remember all the times when they talk about when they would gather, when the dude's disciples would gather together, there would be no separation. It would always be like men and women, all in the same place. Then the other thing that the witnessing of the so-called resurrection really stands out is the fact that so many of the witnesses were like flocks of women. One thing about the Torah, with any study becomes abundantly clear, is that the whole of the law is all about separation of the pure and the impure, and men from women, and from the permitted and the forbidden. I mean, in most, unfortunately, in most places, they don't separate. They don't separate much anymore. But the a person's not supposed to be alone in a the most extreme case is a person not supposed to be alone in a room with a forbidden woman, which for a Jew that means anyone that's not his wife. Needless to say, a goy. How's it going? Yeah, that place is not the greatest. That's but like everywhere, there's some good people there, and there's some not so good people there, and a lot of people need a lot of help, to say the least. Well, it was for a second. How you doing, Anthony? How long has it been out for? I have the phone in my pocket. Anybody there? I'm sure there's probably a great lag. If anyone's there, you just type one letter. Like if you hear me, say yeah or why. Right on. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where it cut off on the thought stream. Probably the second reason for the Christians and the Muslims for to exist in the world other than thrashing God's kids around. The short version, should be pretty obvious. It's a way to give all the people that were, you know, complete idol worshippers, among the nations, a a chance. It's the same one of the same reasons that the Jews are in exile because you know physically in creation they couldn't be a light to the nations if they were still just in Israel, if they hadn't gone into exile. So they they act as a like a stepping stone to the whole truth for everyone that has eyes to see and ears to hear, that isn't like the idols that they worship. Or just wood and stone. Or in some cases, just meat popsicles. Whether that's failed Mashiach 1, 2, 3, or whoever, how many. I mean, Rav Reuven has a shiur on failed Mashiachs. He talks about Septai Tzvi, what most English speakers would pronounce as Sabbatai Zevi, the dude that took some seriously twisted views of the Torah and Kabbalah, and probably started using some of the holy names in a way where he actually called demons or whatever he drew into the world was definitely not holy, and so it had to be sorcery, and it was definitely real. It definitely exists, but it's definitely not from the holy side of heaven. It comes from the other side, what they call the Sitra Akra. Good afternoon, Joshua, and the other Joshua, and Dan. Like I said quite a few times over the last 6 months or so, there's a lot better places a person can learn everything that I talk about here, with without the probably in a much more concise and more accurate way, without as many potential errors. And hopefully the last 3 to 6 months I've done a better job at trying to be more careful at accuracy. And I also know there's also a lot worse places a person can look for the truth and get sucked into hell, even though it might seem nice there for a while. Hopefully you guys can whoever listens to this can eventually just go straight to the source, rather than any unnecessary middleman. And I don't mean everyone should go to God, but everyone needs a teacher. It's good not to jump around though. Once you find a source of the truth in the Torah, it's best to stick with one teacher as much as possible. At least a living teacher. Because that way it's just easier. Because if there's ever any machloket or machlokot, any disagreements or on how a certain thing should be interpreted or whatever, you have a source to rely on, rather than having to second guess and try to pick a side. You don't have to pick, because it's the and that's the thing about the Torah and the arguments, or whatever people perceive them as in the Talmud and the Gemara, is they're not fighting each other for their own ego, and they're not really fighting each other. They're fighting for the truth, and they're doing it for what's called the sake of heaven, for his sake, not for their own. because they want to get to the truth so that they can fulfill his will. And no matter what the conclusion is that they reach, all that matters was their fear of heaven, that they submitted to his will in getting there, that they didn't do it for their own honor, and they did it to glorify his name. There's some disagreements where, most actually. That's the other thing, is that most of the disagreements that appear as disagreements, they aren't disagreements. They're a process that they went through, just as to show everyone that came later that they had thought of everything. A lot of the sages that looked like they said some ridiculous things, they didn't say those things because that's what they actually thought. They said that, certain statements in the process of getting to the truth, to show, the later generations that would study the Torah and the Talmud, that they toiled over everything. They left, no topic and no possible avenue of reasoning or deduction was left out. But I also know that that's probably hard for a lot of you guys to listen to a rabbi and swallow some of the things that they say, and to really take it into your heart, because a person's ego and their evil inclination will fight like hell to keep them from admitting and living the truth. Yeah, the things are a lot easier for intimate relations for the goyim. That's one thing that should probably go over, and it's good to know that there's, some later sages have ruled that it's good for goyim to get married, because it's part of the established courts of justice and, laws, because it helps fortify a civilized society, because, without laws, as much as the anarcho-capitalists and other anarchists would like to not have a government or a system of laws, the people would eat each other alive. because they're really barely anything above animals, and a lot of times a lot worse. But people's own ego and pride prevents them from admitting the harsh truth that they not only not only do they not deserve the free reign to not have a government. It's 100% not good for them. All the all the horrible things in the world, including tyrannical governments and stupid gun laws and dumb IRS tax forms. They're all for the benefit of people. Both as a fence to keep us from hurting ourselves and each other, and as a stick to beat us with to return to him, just like he does to his kids. But we're not the primary concern in the world. All the goyim are basically as a natural state, like one step up above an NPC, a non-player character. Well, the difference between real life and a computer game or a video game is that everyone has the ability to advance, to upgrade. Everyone can become I don't want to say first-person shooter, but they can become an active player, and not just a program. But it takes work. But the thing on marriage for the goyim is the laws now are so screwed up that the societal benefits for marriage are no longer really there. And since by the Torah the goyim aren't commanded to have a marriage, it's kind of up to the individual, I guess. But I may be wrong. I've heard different opinions, but the one from the rulings from the rabbis that I trust and have learned from say that goyim don't need to get married. It really is kind of stupid nowadays to do such a thing, unless it's for like civil reasons, like health insurance and wills and last whatever, like seeing each other in the hospital or having say over another person when what happens to them when they die. If you're going to involve yourself with the state and the any corporate entity that the state is affiliated with, or vice versa, whatever you want to call it, especially like for inheritance or whatever. Well, maybe not for inheritance. A person can set up a trust or whatever. They don't need to be married. They just need to do it in advance, before they die. Otherwise, it's probably not going to work out too well. But other than that, there's there's no marriage. There's there's really no way, you can go to a court and have a judge marry you, but that's kind of technically it's allowed for the goyim because the laws aren't as strict for us as for the Jews, but it's still the the courts now are pretty much wholly against the laws of the Torah, and I mean even before things got really insane with like the last 30 years or whatever, they still weren't in line with the Torah very closely at all. But you definitely don't want to get married by a pastor or a guru or anyone else. And there's really not too many rabbis that would probably do that I would want officiating, because most of the ones that would are they're not kosher, to say the least. So it's really up to the person. It's but it's still, all that aside, no matter what, whether a person decides that it's they should get married because of the conditions that they're in, or whatever, it seems like a necessary step. It's still not good to have intimate relations, no matter who you are, without the intent to be vessels to create new life, for God to create new life. One of the simplest ways to look at it, if a person doesn't know a lot of Torah, is look at what the animals do, and don't do anything worse than that. Like, animals mate during the mating season, and then once they're, I mean, there's a little bit more, a little bit more leeway for people, but and there's a difference between doing what is commanded, for a goy, and doing what is what is pleasing in the eyes of God. Like, according to the Torah, God really doesn't expect a whole lot from us. But that's not to say that we shouldn't do more. One, because there's certain things that it's just good to show gratitude, and more importantly, a person can't really get close to him without doing them. Like, I can't think of any right off the top of my head that's not. I mean, it's not commanded that we say blessing before we eat or we drink, or when we wake up in the morning, but it's good to do. and the thing people have to understand is none of this is for God. God doesn't need our prayers or or anything. God doesn't need us to give charity or help people that are suffering. All this stuff is for our benefit to break our stingy, greedy hearts and to crush our egos and all these other poisonous things that people take and it ultimately destroys them. It kills them, not just in this life, but for forever. I mean, the Torah and the Tanakh say it, over and over again from beginning to end. Like, this is the way to live. Do this so that you shall not die. And two paths are before you. You can choose life or you can choose death. And if a person reads closely, even though the Torah and maybe the Tanakh never really specifically say like there's going to be that people don't go to heaven or will go to heaven. Those are all things people are supposed to infer from, like what is said. Like God rewards certain small acts of wicked people with like abundant wealth, and like he rewarded I forget which one of the wicked kings. I think might have been Nebuchadnezzar. But he ruled the whole world for like 70 years because he took 4 steps to change the wording of a letter that he wrote to the king of Israel. He shifted his praise for the king of Israel below his praise for God, because originally he had said, like blessings on the king of Israel, blessings on God, and blessings on the people. And he stopped his scribe from delivering the letter after he'd written it, and reworded the letter so he put God's name first. And that's why he was allowed to rule the world for 70 years. And that's a wicked king. So the rewards of a righteous person, for saying a blessing, for helping someone that is righteous or trying to be righteous with charity or kindness, or fulfilling, needless to say, a Jew, when they do any of those things, their reward cannot be repaid in this world. And the same goes with transgressions for any of his negative commandments. The punishment can't be paid in this world, because it's whatever a person wants to call it: punishment, cleansing, correction. Yeah, you may be right. My knowledge on the details of the Tanakh is definitely very minimal. With a great deal of his help, maybe one day I'll slowly have a better ability to retain and give over more of it. but still, the number one thing to do is with interactions with a for a man to a woman and vice versa is, you know, ideally, if you really want to be close to him, is to be as modest and as appropriate as possible, and imagine he is there all the time, because he is. And for a guy, watch your eyes, which you don't literally put a mirror in front of your face and watch your eyes, but stay as far away from anything. For myself, that's pretty much any corner of a woman. Like, I don't even, because I know if I see it's or if I see a woman, it's not going to be good. Eventually, I'll fail. Not intentionally, and it's but it's not the intentional. It's even the unintentional sins. Even when a person is asleep. But I gotta hold on. If you guys want to hang tight, just a second. Okay, how you guys doing? I gotta get some more water real quick. Okay, watching your eyes. It's I don't know how much you guys have paid attention or how much I've talked about in the past. I posted a video on one of the other channels about wasting seed at night, or I guess during the day and at night. But if they I can't recall what the passage is in Tehillim in Psalms, but Davina Melech says that that a person should guard their eyes during the day, so they're not visited by evil at night. And what he's talking about is guarding their eyes from immodesty, so a person is not visited by the wife of the Satan, which is really what every image that a man sees in his dreams, that's what it really is. It's definitely not a woman or the soul of a woman or anything remotely good at all, even if it looks like your girlfriend or your wife. And what happens with every seed that doesn't that leaves the body, that isn't with the intent to create life, in a realistic sense. It doesn't matter if you're thinking in your head like create life, but your tubes are tied. That's not really you probably don't have the merit for God to make a miracle to make that happen. Which, for anyone watching, if you're thinking about it, or in the future, you definitely shouldn't get your tubes tied, because that's a sin. You shouldn't do it to your dog either, because for one, it's unnatural, and it's against his will, and it's cruelty to the animal. But if a man is alone, if he doesn't have a wife, or if he's a goy, a woman that he's with, that he's allowed to be with, someone that's not someone else's wife or girlfriend, or not his daughter or his mother or his mother-in-law or his daughter-in-law, or even if your dad or your son is dead, it's still forbidden. If I'm recalling correctly, anyway. I know some of the laws, it's hard to parse between what's permitted for who. But if there's one thing, that if you're ever in doubt about the laws, and you're not forbidden from observing a commandment, and it's not a hardship for you or anyone else, it's always better to do the stringency, but only so often as it's like it doesn't become too hard. Then You don't want to make like you don't want to build a mountain for yourself and then not be able to climb it. That's that's one thing with certain communities. They've taken it upon themselves to kind of live by the stringencies, and there's certain people, they just can't. They end up breaking, and they get ostracized, even though they haven't literally, they haven't transgressed any of the written or the oral Torah or any of the halakha, but they've transgressed a stringency on the from the community, which there are certain ones that are understandable and they're they're good, but when a person has to know uh, when to follow a stringency and when not to, and when to so they don't push someone further away. Basically, whether it's someone else or themselves, because there's no mitzvah if you cause someone else to sin. That's not to say that if a person follows the Torah and someone who's already a sinner or not observant, lives a wicked life, it's going to continue to be wicked or acts more wicked. There's nothing that you can do about that. It's just like yeah, I don't know about all I can give on advice for people that have a hard time having kids is that nothing is beyond him. Absolutely nothing. The only roadblock for any miracle to happen is whether a person has the merit. And if a person wants kids or anything else, the never stop praying for whatever it is, but pray for it in a way that ask that you be guided to have the merit to receive the blessings that he wants to give you, and for you to build a vessel for you to receive the blessings, because a person has to have some kind of physical act in creation, whether it's where it's like like if they're sick, and it all it all depends on the level of emunah, of faith and trust that they have in God, that how much effort or how large a vessel they have to make, or whatever. Maybe it's not size of the vessel, but how much effort and toil they have to go through in order to receive the blessing. If a person's sick, if they have the merit, and if they have a really high level of or a moderate level of emunah, they may only have to get like rest and take some supplements or something like that. where if they don't have the merit, or if there's some suffering that they need to go through, whether as a rectification for sin after they did tshuva, or to make them do teshuva, or in order for a person to go through the suffering to get them closer to God, and to move them up in their spiritual level, then they'll have to go through a whole lot, and it'll be really hard, and it will probably not be too pleasant. Everything from going to 10 different doctors and hundreds of appointments to surgery, or what else, whatever, various things. But the highest level of emunah is, but also it has to coincide with a person's merit. The person can know in their heart that doctors don't cure. There's only one doctor, and that is the creator of everything and the master of the universe. The doctor is just a vessel, a physical and rational excuse in creation for to kind of hide his acts in, so that the people that don't have the merit to believe and to follow his laws, they just want to follow their own desires, so that they have an excuse, both as far as other people that see that a person was sick and got cured, and as a test for the doctor himself, so he might say, I cured this man, or I saved this woman's life. That's because I went to school, to a university, and I studied and spent countless years and thousands of hours of internship at various hospitals, and I'm super smart and I worked hard for it, which is not the case at all. It's also not the case of why so, a lot of doctors are wealthy. all the money a person gets is decided every year based on their merits, and they would have got the same thing whether they were a doctor, or the CEO of a corporation, or whether they mowed lawns for a living. Because if God wants to give somebody money or anything else, whatever it is, he doesn't need a person to have a degree. He can magically, or not magically, but he can have the circumstances arise where a person receives some inheritance from a relative that he didn't even know, and all of a sudden he's got $1 million, or owns 10 houses. You're welcome. I gotta get going now, though. Hopefully we can all have the merit to complete our teshuva and fulfill his will, and help others to do the same with a great deal of his help.